You know what's so incredibly beautiful about midwifery birth that I think isn't spoken of enough is that it completely centers the birthing person.
Hi, Internet. We are reacting to a beautiful home birth vlog of a baby born en caul, in the sack, protected, veiled, special, magic. And we talk about some of the opinions regarding breaking waters, when to break waters, why, and maybe those opinions at your birth. Stay tuned and make sure to subscribe to our videos and follow us at Midwifery Wisdom. And we'll look forward to more vlogs as season 2 kicks off. I don't know if it's the same for you guys, but like the visceral body feeling I have watching those OBs versus watching this birth space right now is like so different.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it reminds me of that Ina May quote, right? Birth doesn't happen the same way around surgeons as it does supportive women.
I am way less on edge watching those two white coats talk, you know, what this here versus that. Like that was really, I didn't realize until this came on and I just like had a total body exhale.
Yeah. Well, imagine what being fully pregnant and walking to that environment feels like, right? Like it's a crazy difference.
Yeah.
But home birth is beautiful. Let's see it.
For her in my heart.
Look at all that support.
That I come near her, I just lose my nerve as I've done from the start. Do I have to tell the story of 1,000 rainy days?
You know what's so incredibly beautiful about midwifery birth that I think isn't spoken of enough is that it completely centers the birthing person. And this is what I think tubs actually amplify. Because it's an actual physical barrier, this lovely circle, sometimes oval, around the birthing person in the tub. Nobody can actually, you have to work to enter that space. Yeah. Right? You have to kneel down and reach out and make yourself uncomfortable to reach into that space. There's this natural barrier, physical barrier. And so people touch you less, do less, interfere less. And if they are going to interfere, there's a very obvious image when you cross into her bubble. And so you get permission more. You say what you're going to do. You explain it. It's also, there's like a accountability and an integrity there because everyone else can see you crossing their boundary. Versus being in a bed, being on your back, because of that patient mentality that's present in our culture, there seems to be a lot less natural barriers, boundaries, and therefore the person has to bring other people like doulas and advocates to try to protect their space. That's what I just love about midwifery. Everyone is focused towards the birthing person and supporting. There are all these layers of support. In the hospital, most people are focused towards the equipment, the machinery, or even the doctor. And it's just such a different image. There's a couple.
Every little thing she does is magic. Everything she does just turns me on.
Unwrapping a present. Good student midwife.
Podium in there, but he's grimacing. He's got good tone.
I just want to point out something. We've talked about this before, but really quick, you might not have even noticed. The midwife said to her, "Do you want to reach down and grab your baby?" And she said no. And so the midwife just held until she then.
Yeah.
And we've talked before about the pause, giving them a moment. whether they want to immediately or whether they need to collect themselves before they're ready to.
Mhm.
And there's that little example of it. I loved that.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
But it's also an option. It's also offered and it's given, rather than assuming that I'm going to catch every baby, that I'm going to bring that baby to the chest, or that I'm not going to bring the baby to the chest, right? Like it doesn't matter. I worked for a lot of different midwives that like don't say, do you want to reach down and get your baby, or who's catching, or, you know, like all of these things. And it's just like, it's this assumption that you've hired me to catch your baby and put it immediately on your chest without any discussion of those variations of in between. And I think that as birthing people, we need to maybe remember to have that discussion with our midwife or our provider on and you may not know what it is, right? Like you said, Becca, like my initial desire is to catch my own baby and have no one touch my baby except for me. But if in that moment, it's too intense, everything is too big, and I just needs a second, you have someone there that just, whenever you're ready, right?
Yeah.
Whenever you're ready to reach down and get your baby, I've got her, you know?
Yeah.
And to be able to trust someone enough to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really powerful. Really powerful.
We're all here, dude. Every little thing she does is magic. Everything she does turns me on. Even though my life before was tragic, now I know my love for her goes on.
Okay,
Such a beautiful
really
woman.
quick. So what is the definition of En Caul? Because the baby wasn't fully out.
They can't come out fully in Caul. I think that's a major myth. Any of the En Caul fully, like a baby in a sack videos on YouTube, are C-sections. Because in order for the baby to come out, the placenta stays inside. They don't come out together unless it's a cesarean. And it's a cesarean, they can come out together, and then the baby has lost their lifeline and is actually there dying. So those are horrible videos. I hate them. They freak me
Augustine
out.
sent me one, and it was like they took everything out, and I was like, and they're just like hanging out there. I'm like, are they just waiting for this baby to die? Like,
It's
what
insane.
is happening?
Insane. No, in a normal vaginal birth, the placenta stays inside in the uterus. The baby is moving down and out the uterus. The bag has to break somewhere. It's not that stretchy. So what normally happens is that the amnion and the chorion, the two parts of the amniotic sac, break in different places and it stretches. It unwounds. Like Becca, can you insert a video of like separating the placental membranes? That'll be, there's videos of this. I think we have one. Where you can pull apart the two layers, right? And so what happens is if the amnion breaks lower by the baby's head and the chorion breaks by the baby's placenta, then they're gonna just like unravel like that so that the bag's getting bigger, staying over the baby's head, but it's not really. It's broken. It's just we can't see the broken part. Does that make sense?
I wonder if there's a higher incidence of, I mean, like this is all the research, which by the way, I tried to do some of this earlier when I made that other post because I was like, I just want to, there's like nothing. There's like no research on on-call babies, except for one preterm birth where the baby had respiratory distress and they were born on call. And I was like, well, we can't, it's like correlation, causation. But I wonder about higher incidences of low-lying placenta and on-call, or fundal placenta on call, just because like the association to where the placenta is. I mean, obviously we have higher incidences of on-call births with lower intervention, lower
you don't
augmentation of labor,
it's much more likely
breaking
to stay
the
intact.
waters, you know, movement, things like that.
Yeah.
But I wonder physiologically if there's anything that connects.
I don't know.
Water people, right?
We've had a ton of prom recently in my practice, a ton of premature rupture of membranes. I'm so sick of it. And so we started digging into research about what makes a strong bag.
Right.
And I think that might have a higher thing to do with it. Like Christine Laurie, one of the Midwifery Wisdom mentors, was doing births in, help me.
So many places.
She was
just recently in the South Sudan. And she said they never saw a prom. And she had like 10 babies born in the bag. And so we were talking about the mineral content of those soils, or the fluoride in the water, or the vitamin D in the diet, or like we were talking about what could have been the determiner, because here, nada, like everybody's water breaks in labor or before they're even in labor or preterm. Like prom is such a problem here. So there's obviously some nutrient missing, or there's some bacteria present, or there's something that's weakening.
That makes me go so deep, and I'm like trying to make sure that I'm like, thinking all these different in the right context. But in South Sudan, I don't know if there's higher risk of infection for all types of infection. I don't know if, right. But interesting that in a first world country, like America, where we have vaccinations, antibacterials, hand washing, cleanliness active, we have a high risk, we have a high incidence of prom. And in a space where there's a higher, maybe, or a less, public
less
health
resources
standard
of everything.
for resources for cleanliness, there's a lower incidence of prom. And it's like the body freaking knows.
Yeah. Maybe.
That they need to protect the baby. That's so interesting. This was a great video, you guys.
That was a great video. I'm really happy to see centering the birthing person. I'm really happy to see uncalled births, because it breaks that myth that it's 1 in 80,000. It's not 1 in 80,000. It's 1 in 80,000 when you routinely break the water. When you leave it intact, a lot of them come out in the shroud. And in old midwifery lore, being born En Caul means that you're born with a sixth sense. You're able to see beyond the veil into the other worlds. So
and
maybe
protected.
this baby has that left.
And
you're obviously
from
protected from all kinds of things.
Yeah. And I will say too that there was a time, and I see, and maybe this is ageist of me, but I have worked with a lot of different aged midwives, and there are some midwives that are just like part of the school of thought that like you get to 8, you break the waters, or you never break the waters, or things like that. And I think that we're going through these new times of changing some styles, right? Would you say that that's pretty, have you seen that, Augustine, where it's like, this whole 20-year timeline, they were like pro AROM. And then this whole 10-year timeline, they're like, don't touch them at all, right? Like,
definitely. It's a pendulum, but if it's a pendulum, it's not evidence-based, it's opinion-based.
Right. Yeah, it's
because
true.
only opinions can swing, right?
Unless new evidence comes out and supports new opinions.
Okay, but the evidence of safety with the bag intact has not changed in a millennia. Like, it's always safer to be in your own environment than not. The only reason breaking the water has become a thing is to speed labor up or to do internal monitoring. Historically, theoretically, experientially, empirically, and just common sense, they're in a bag through the whole pregnancy. Why wouldn't they be in the bag until they're born? Like, that's where they belong. That's their home. Taking away that barrier, that protection, that home is for our benefit, convenience, or desire, not the baby's, right? So that evidence isn't going to change. So the habit of breaking or not breaking is a habit. It's an opinion. It's not evidence-based. So there's no evidence is going to say it's definitely better if the water breaks. Like, that's not a thing.
Yeah.
And the only evidence that could point to it being better is time. But time is completely irrelevant. It's that's opinion as well. Does that make sense?
And there's lots of opinions at birth. There's an opinion of the birthing person that's been doing this for 30 hours and wants things to speed up. Or there's the opinion of the doula that's afraid of that we break it and we end up with no change and we transfer eventually. And then there's the opinion of the tired midwife that's been doing this for 30 hours with the birthing person, just wants to get it over with.
You don't have a big enough team.
Opinions. There's so many opinions. And that is important to realize.
There was a study that 60% of all of the techniques in obstetrics are based on opinion and habit, not evidence. We'll put that in this. I'll link that study. That was
Yeah.
interesting stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I think less intervention is better. I think more space for the timing of it all to unfold for normal people. And again, risk assessment is the foundation of good care. If they're high risk, we have a different story, but we talk about low risk community-based birth. And if they're low risk, no reason why it can't be timeless.
Yeah. I just think that AROM breaking waters is probably one of the highest opinionated intervention that exists in both obstetrics and midwifery. It's like it goes both spaces, and
it does. And it does. And one of the reasons is because there is not evidence on many of the decisions we have to make. It has to be empirical or opinion-based. There's just not running studies on it. Like in a couple of these videos, we're looking for studies about this or for that. And there just aren't any, right? The other piece is that the reason studies get produced is because somebody pays for them. And the only incentive to pay for something is if you get some rate of return, some return on investment, some ROI. There is no ROI for doing nothing in our capitalistic society. So a lot of times we won't know.